Elon Musk is not an engineer. How do I know? Well, for starters, he is rich. Welcome to The Big Puzzle. In this podcast, we explore the subtle connections between science, religion, politics, economics, and history. One piece at a time, we unveil the big picture of this shared experience that we call life. First of all, let me explain why I chose this topic. This is not about attacking Elon Musk, even though I will be. But I think this is an interesting topic that will help us connect different pieces of the puzzle. There are some components that had to do with science, in particular with chemistry, physics. Some other have to do with economics, also with politics, with human behavior, the human mind. So I think it's a very interesting topic to address from different points of view. To start with, I will address one of the problems. Probably this will be a series of videos. I don't know if they will be consecutive. If you're interested in hearing more soon, just let me know in the comments and I can prioritize this. If not, maybe I will just take one video every month or something like that. We'll see. I'm about the same age as Elon Musk. He's actually a little over 2 months older than me. And so we grew up in a time at the tail of the space race where there's still all this hype about the space and traveling, all the missions the Apollo missions to the moon. And it was very, very exciting. I had a lot of books about rockets and the missions and the future. And I could draw a Saturn V rocket by heart. Probably I could still do it. That was so impactful in my life. I spent hours and hours looking at these books. I remember, in particular, I was very interested in the timelines that they posted about when different milestones will happen. So when will men go to Mars? When will they leave the solar system? When they will reach the next star? And when there will be first empty, hollow an asteroid and create seed inside, and then all those things. And I remember looking at what age would I be when those things happen. And it was very sad for me to see that some of them would probably exceed my lifespan. So I would never be witnessing that myself. Well, all that I think is an important part of what led me to become an engineer. I wanted to be part of that. I wanted to understand those things. Unfortunately, as an engineer, you start learning a lot of things and you realize that some of those promises, well, those were just promises. Those will not happen. Not in my lifetime, probably not in a couple of millennia. But yeah, I can understand the excitement of Elon Musk. I think that the big difference is that he never became an engineer. He has a degree in physics apparently, but every time that he talks about physics, he says things that make no sense. So I don't know if he's just lying or he's just ignorant. What I know that he's a great salesman and he sells ideas. And for some reason, people keep buying those ideas, even though some of those ideas are terrible. But yeah, that's what he does, and more power to him. This is not an attack on him personally. I really wish him well, especially with his apparent new role of optimizing the government and reducing unnecessary costs. I think that's something that has to be done. Not completely sure he's the best person to do it, but probably I don't see that he could make any harm by trying. So yeah, good luck, Elon Musk, but sorry, you are not a good engineer, and we are not going to be in Mars anytime soon. So let's have a look at one of the ideas that he's trying to sell. And he recently posted it in Twitter, X, and he said, if civilization is reasonably stable for the next 30 years, a self-sustaining city of 1 million plus people will be built on Mars. No, that's not going to happen. But he is clever, and there's a reason why he put that qualifier at the beginning. If civilization is reasonably stable for the next 30 years, well, give me any recent history where civilization has been stable, even reasonably stable for 30 years. So he can always, pedal back and say, well, yeah, my expectation was that civilization would be stable, then we could have done it. But truth is that we don't have the technology. And when I say that we're not going to go to Mars, I'm not talking about being able to put one human being in Mars and hopefully bring them back alive. But there's no way we're going to have a city, not even 10 people. And I will explain in this video and other videos why. And if you disagree, be my guest. I love to be proven wrong. But we need to agree in the rules of engagement. This is about science, especially in these first couple of videos. We're going to be talking about scientific aspects of this. If you can prove me wrong scientifically, I'm more than glad to learn. And sometimes to learn, you need to be wrong. So please, I'm challenging you. If anything that I'm saying is wrong, well, let me know and I will change my opinion. Most of the topics that we will be talking about have to do with energy. And space travel is extremely dependent on energy, and we will be talking about that. Also, sustaining human life requires energy, a lot of energy. And today we're going to be covering one of those that is so prevalent in everything that we do every day that we usually don't think about that. And so we need to explain the concept of combustion. So to talk about combustion, we need to talk a little about chemistry. And, chemistry is about how different elements combine to each other and how they, they could be transformed from one to another and so on. Let's do a very simple example. So we have some molecules that are hydrocarbons. That means that there's some carbon atom with some hydrogen atoms combined in a certain way. And then we have some molecules of oxygen. So the molecules of oxygen are usually just two oxygen together. So let's talk about the simplest hydrocarbon that we have, that is methane. Methane is just a carbon with 4 hydrogens. The issue is that, carbon and hydrogen, they kind of like each other and they stay together. But when they're in the presence of oxygen, they, with a little nudge of energy, they realize that they don't like each other that much. And they both like oxygen more than they like each other. So what it happens then is that they split, right? And some of the hydrogens will go with some of the oxygen and they form water. And some of the oxygen go with the carbon and they become carbon monoxide if there's not enough oxygen, or carbon dioxide, so a carbon with 2 oxygens. And they go the way. So during that process, they release energy. And that's why we can, use it in everyday application. So we usually don't use methane that much. Well, we do, but the process is pretty much the same. You have a molecule that has a lot of carbon and hydrogen, and then you have oxygen, right? And that change of elements releases energy that is used in different ways. So if you can think about a car, the fuel in the car, it's loaded with hydrocarbons, and again it requires oxygen in, and then there's a spark that creates the explosion, right? And that explosion is actually the energy that is liberated, and then you have leaving the engine, you have the both water, usually in the form of vapor, and then carbon dioxide. So, but that not only happens in engines, it also happens inside of us. So we get food, and that food is loaded with carbon and hydrogen, and then we breathe in. In the cells, this combination happens, and then they release both water that sometimes is just taken out of our body through different ways, and also carbon dioxide, that is what we breathe out. So the temperature that we have as living beings have to do with that combustion that is happening inside of us. So it's not something that's just chemical that happens in industrial settings, but it's also that happens inside of us. Now, what is the problem? Well, the problem is that you could reverse that. You could convince the hydrogens to go back with the carbon and the oxygen to leave their way, but you need to put the exact same energy that they released. So one of the problems, that people are talking all the time about global warming. Well, global warming is the result of those combustions happening from machines, from humans, from animals, from a lot of different sources. But we are creating more and more carbon dioxide. And when somebody says, oh, we created this or that will, reduce the carbon dioxide, well, the truth is that you cannot, because you need to put the exact same energy. You have to have a reverse engine, that you put all the energy that was used to break the hydrocarbons apart. Now you need to use that same energy to put them together. And obviously that will be if it's 100% efficient. So really you need to put more energy than that. And that is not feasible, right? That's not something that we could easily do. So every time that somebody says, oh, this will capture carbon dioxide and liberate the oxygen, well, sorry, it's not happening. It's not about finding the technology. This is thermodynamics, right? Luckily for us, there are some machines that we don't even need to put together that can do that, and those are trees. So trees, they gather energy from the sun, they grab water, usually from the roots, from the soil, and then they produce and carbon dioxide as well, and then they produce photosynthesis, right? With that photosynthesis, they reduce some of the carbon dioxide with the water, and they create a hydrocarbon that is cellulose. So it's not perfect because cellulose still has a lot of oxygen in it, but still can release some of the oxygen back to the atmosphere. So trees are really, our counterpart in this planet. We, through combustion, internal combustion, we generate carbon dioxide and water, and then the trees do the opposite. Not extremely efficiently, but efficiently enough. Efficiently enough to require, numbers may vary because of a lot of variables, but you could think about that every one of us would need 10 trees, 10 mature trees to just take care of the carbon dioxide that we breathe out. So which are your 10 trees? Which are the 10 trees in the world that'll keep you alive? Well, I don't know, but if you can plant a tree, you're helping. Now let's go back to Mars. If we're going to have people there, well, those people have to breathe and they will need oxygen. What is the problem? There is no free oxygen in the atmosphere in Mars. So actually most of the atmosphere in Mars is carbon dioxide. As we explained, it's very difficult. Carbon dioxide is so stable that it requires a lot of energy to split it, to take the oxygen out of the carbon. You can say, well, but we can send trees. Okay, we send 10 million people, we just need to send 10 million trees. Well, there's a few problems with that, and we're going to address just one today. The first of them is that trees require energy, and that energy comes from the sun. So this solar irradiation in Mars, it's about 43%, I think, of the Earth, just because the planet is farther from the sun. On the positive side, the atmosphere is so thin that most of the solar radiation actually reaches the surface, unlike what happens in the Earth. So that kind of contributes to have a little more energy reaching. But still, trees would, trees do shut down when there's no light, especially when there's low temperature, and they shed the leaves, and they stop producing oxygen. So first we would need to design some trees that could work with very low light, and especially with extremely low temperatures. There's a reason why you don't have trees in Antarctica, right? The temperature is critical, and Mars temperatures are worse than Antarctica. So there's another problem with trees, is that trees also require they cannot just stand alone. They need sometimes pollination, so they need bugs, and those bugs also, they need to support temperatures, and so everything in life in the Earth is optimized to the conditions of the planet, and Mars is way too different. So we would need to do some extreme genetic engineering that hasn't been done, and I don't think that it's even feasible, just because the processes of that require life, they require a very narrow range of temperatures that are not achievable in Mars, at least in the exterior. But that's not even the worst problem. We're going to talk about the worst problem that I think in the next video. But still, planting 10 million trees, also those trees have to be enclosed in a controlled environment, so the oxygen that they're generating doesn't just go away. Because if they just go into Mars atmosphere, well, it's so big that you wouldn't even notice that the trees are doing anything. The oxygen would not be useful. And that's just for people to breathe, right? We do have a lot of other processes that require oxygen. So as you can see, it's extremely difficult. I would argue it's impossible for 1 million people live in Mars. There's no way that you could sustain that. And in the 70s, and I think even the 80s, and maybe in the 90s, there was this experiment that is called Biosphere 2, and you should look at that. So that's an indication of how difficult it is to balance a biosphere, a bioma, so all the interaction between the different animals, plants. There are some studies about, instead of using trees, using algae, but I think it has the exact same problems. To make things worse, and we're not going to talk a lot about that, well, also Mars doesn't have a magnetic field, so there's a lot of radiation problems. They're not protected like we are in Earth. So that will kill people, that will kill plants, that will kill eventually animals, and so on. So this is just to tackle the first problem. And I think it's interesting that it has this chemical component, how combustion is very difficult to reverse. If we could reverse it in Mars, we could reverse it here easily, and we wouldn't have global warming. And how much money, how many studies did we make to try to reverse the levels of carbon dioxide, and nobody found a feasible solution. So implementing that solution in another planet with 1,000 other problems, that's not happening. Sorry, Elon Musk, but yeah, that's just vaporware. Okay, so this will be the first of this series of analyzing why we're not going to be going to Mars anytime soon. It's difficult to set a homework, but I think I hinted at that. So protect the trees. Trees are your friends. There's 10 trees around the world that actually are making your life possible. So plant a tree, keep a tree, be nice to trees, be nice to animals, be nice to each other, and yeah, let's try to make this planet last as long as we can, and let's not just put our faith in going somewhere else because this planet is doomed. It's as doomed as we want to make it. And I'm not an environmentalist, I'm not an extremist. I think that we have a responsibility over this planet, that we need to live in it. I don't think that we're just another species of animals. I think we're more important than that, but that stewardship is important, and we need to take care of this planet and don't create combustion unnecessarily if you can avoid it. And yeah, just be mindful of that. That would be my homework for you today. So as always, if you enjoy this video, or you want to comment something, or you want me to talk about some other piece of the puzzle, just write it in the comments, share it with other people, subscribe if you haven't, and again, thank you for helping me place this piece of the puzzle. I hope you enjoyed it, and well, I'll see you in the next one.